So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite Mary Bodwin, former ISN board member and the assistant for social ministries for the provincial of the Jesuits, U.S. Central and Southern Province. That is a title. I was actually thinking on the way here, I'd like to see your business card. It's got to be more like a license size. So I'd love to invite you, Mary, to come up and to introduce Father Fred Kramer.
Just a long title. It's not as impressive as it sounds. I'm going to ask Kelly to help me out here because any kind of time Fred Kammer is doing a presentation, you have to have a Fred Kammer PowerPoint, which is a bulleted list on newsprint. So I'm using this bulleted list to introduce my friend, my mentor, my role model, Father Fred Kammer. Fred is, first of all, I don't have one of these fancy laser things, but Fred wouldn't have one either. It's not that technological. But he's a Jesuit priest. He's recently celebrated 60 years of faithful companionship in the Jesuit mission of justice and reconciliation. He's a leader. He's been the director of Catholic Charities Baton Rouge, which is where I first met him many, many years ago, and the president of Catholic Charities USA. He was provincial of the New Orleans province during a really pivotal time, especially right after Hurricane Katrina, and he rebuilt us, and he hired me. He was the founder and director of the Jesuit Social Research Institute, a joint project of the U.S. Central and Southern Province and Yale University, New Orleans, and he's been on many boards, including the Ignatian Solidarity Network board. He's an author. He's published 3 books, Salted with Fire, Faith, Works, and Wonders, which is about Catholic charities, and Doing Faith Justice, which I think it's in its 15th revision now. I think actually it's in its 4th revision right now. And he's written numerous articles and reports. He's a speaker and a wonderful preacher. He's spoken all over the world to rapt audiences. He's an amazing homilist, and recently he's brought those gifts to the incarcerated men at Angola State Prison. And y'all, they love him. And I've heard so many positive things from people who know people who are incarcerated there and have been so moved by Fred's homilies. He's a facilitator extraordinaire, even if he has killed a lot of trees in the process of filling out lots of newsprint. He's helped groups all over the world do planning to move forward with clearer vision and purpose, including the Ignatian Solidarity Network, and recently led their strategic planning process. 2 times, whoa. He's a lawyer, and he thinks like a lawyer. He's methodical, he's analytical, he's logical, which is a gift that he's brought to all the ministries that he's worked with, even when sometimes that has personally driven me crazy. He's a mentor to many, many young people, including me. At one time I was young, who have a passion for justice. And for years, he's done retreats and spiritual direction and offered support to Jesuit volunteers. And he and I worked together on their reorientation retreat for a number of years. He did it by himself for a long time, and then they said, I think we ought to have a woman, so I became the trophy presenter, is what I called. And he's a connoisseur of many things, including mediocre bourbon, what I consider bad red wine, an occasional good cigar, some questionable jokes that he might tell you, and especially the ones that involve Boudreaux and Thibodeau, storytelling, meditation by his beloved bay in Mobile, outside of Mobile, Alabama, and most recently he's become a connoisseur of nature documentaries. He is my friend, he's my mentor, my role model, and he's that for so many others in this room and around the world. I can't think of any Jesuit leader, author, preacher, facilitator, lawyer, mentor, more deserving of this recognition. And Fred, we are so grateful to you. Thank you.
Carlos, I too am using paper, but mine is off of a Sparko legal mini pad. Let me just say something about Mary. I hired her as the provincial in the 90s, and she has survived 4 provincials. That is an unimaginable achievement, really, etc. That's right. Anyway, I want to thank ISN and thank all of you for being here, and thank you for this honor. And Loretta, thank you for your husband's great work, and that he was the founder of ISN. I'm also honored because I get to hang out. If you look at the list of people who've gotten this award, I get to hang out with some great people. Helen Prejean, if you've never had an evening of drinking bourbon with Helen and telling Cajun jokes, that's a special occasion, too. Father Brian Massingale, Sister Norma Pimentel, who's right in the heart of the action down on the border. John Bauman, the great Jesuit who helped to found PICO on the West Coast. Greg Boyle of Homeboys. And, of course, Jack Roslowski, who we heard from tonight. Jack, in fact, was the chair who handed me the gavel to be the chair, and I handed it on to Vincent, etc. But Robin and I first met on the first strategic planning committee that I was on as part of ISN. In Ignatius, one of Ignatius's letters, he says, the greatest sin is ingratitude, and that it is the source of all other sins, because we forget the giver of all the gifts we have. And this is an occasion for gratitude. I'm at a point in my life, next month I'm going to be 79. I'll be entering my 80th year. I'm at a point in my life where I feel called to greater gratitude for everything I've had the opportunity to be part of along the way, and to share this award with Vince and Robin. First with Robin and then with Vincent later on the board. And with Chris Bars, whose 40 years of work in El Salvador remind us of all the people who were murdered there, including the Jesuits. And also remind us, in the midst of the debate about immigration, about the push factors that push people out of their own countries and force them to immigrate to somewhere safer. But Easter is about hope. It's about believing in. I always think the 2 graces that I ask for during the period of Easter, the weeks afterwards, is to believe and trust the power of resurrection, that new life can come through and after death. And for an older man, seeing the kids at the teach-in and in other activities of ISN, and seeing Jordan and Miriam be honored here today, helps me to be hopeful that there will be, when I pass from the scene, that there will be others struggling for peace and justice in our world, and that will continue, and that hope is that important. One of the darkest days that I remember in my years was the mid-'90s, when what they call the contract with America was really the contract on America in the Congress. And at the time, I was the president of Catholic Charities USA, so I was traveling the country doing days of prayer and recollection with staffs and boards, et cetera, and people were very down about what would happen to the poor. And in fact, what was predicted happened. At that time of the thing, 68% of the poorest families in this country received some cash assistance. That number dropped the last time I looked at it to about 23%. So we cut off one of the major sources going back all the way to the Depression that poor families lived on. Aid to families with dependent children, or aid to dependent children, whatever it was called. But I was in California at an agency, I think Santa Rosa, Santa Clara, whatever it was, and for the prayer, some of you have heard me use this text, for the prayer they were using a text that came off of, I have the original from that prayer service, it came off the Bay Area Rapid Transit. It has their little logo on the bottom of it. But it's a quotation from Václav Havel, the Czech poet. And it's actually, as I tracked down the quotation later on, I found out it was from a speech he gave at Liberty Hall in Philadelphia in 1987, when his country was under the communist domination, and he was an anti-communist spokesperson. And these 3 paragraphs are the best things about hope that I know of, other than the wonderful stories Jesus tells about planting seeds from which forests grow. And so I'll just share these 3 short paragraphs with you from Václav Havel. Either we have, and I carry it actually in my wallet in this little plastic thing, in very small print. Either we have hope within us or we don't. It is a dimension of the soul, and it's not essentially dependent upon some particular observation of the world or estimate of the situation. Hope is not prognostication. It is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. Hope in this deep and powerful sense is not the same as joy that things are going well, or willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. Hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. It is this hope, above all, which gives us the strength to live and continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. That last sentence always gets me, because 3 years later, the wall fell in his country, and he later went on to be the president of the Czech Republic. But it is this hope above all which gives us the strength to live and continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. So thank you.